most of the time when people think of archaeology, particularly pre-contact or ancient archaeology, they think it's something of the distant past and almost a curiosity that has no meaning in the present. And actually, it's quite the opposite. Well, hello, I'm Dr. Cook from Ohio State University. I'm a professor of anthropology, an archaeologist specifically that's focused on the area for quite a long time, 20 plus years. So we're here at the Turpin site because it's one of the most important archaeological sites in the Midwest. The first corn farmers came here from hundreds of miles away. It represents sort of a gateway community where the whole new idea of corn farming started. They were living in villages for the first time, so it's quite important archaeologically, right? And but there's more to the story. We're here because this site has been greatly damaged, I would say, by earlier excavators. Not that they intended to damage it, but of course, in the 1800s, when Harvard first started here, they were doing things very differently. And even in the 1940s, when the Cincinnati Museum dug here, methods have been improved significantly since then. So we're really trying to make better sense of what we call legacy collections, collections that are in museums that were gathered a long time ago. We're trying to pick up the pieces, essentially, of those earlier excavators and then learn more in ways that they never would have thought of, right? So, for example, in the 1800s and the 1940s, they would have never collected much in the way of burned wood or burned material because radiocarbon dating didn't exist until the 1950s. And so that's one thing we're really looking for. Every archaeologist really wants to date things, and we have nothing almost to date from the site. So we're coming back to understand the history of the site piece by piece and really doing an archaeology of archaeology to some extent. The third reason, I would say, and these are all equally weighted, is that we're really trying to work with descendant communities to help them in their interest in reconnecting with this landscape. They were displaced violently, forcefully, at the hands of early Euro-Americans, and we want to help them better understand their native homelands. And so we're working very closely with them in all kinds of ways. So it's really a multi-part process, each of which I think is wickedly interesting and important work. So behind us, we're working in a couple areas that are on the map that we think Harvard had sort of exposed and gathered a few things from. The closest tent is covering an excavation unit where they're uncovering the remains of a centralized cooking feature, a centralized feature within these villages. Like I said, villages start about 1,000 years ago here, and for the first time in the Midwest, arguably. And in the center of these villages were very communal activities, big feasting pits and big communal kind of bonfire pits and ceremonial things. So we're trying to understand a little bit about what was going on in the middle of the village behind me. And then in the farthest tent, we're trying to excavate the westernmost extent of the site where we know the least about it from Harvard's notes. It's very unclear where they dug. We're trying to make sense of that, and we're finding bits and pieces of their excavation, nails from the 1800s, broken glass and things like that, as well as new things that they missed. Archaeology has an incredible importance in the present. The communities that live here are the descendants of people who interacted first with native peoples. Not to say that they're all the ancestors of people who displaced them, but to some extent, the story is still being written and it's still being uncovered because a lot of information was never recorded. We know very little about the native and early American interactions here. And by very little, I mean almost nothing. And so through the archaeology, we can maybe better understand that interaction in ways that aren't just sort of anecdotal and sort of, to some extent, mythologized, right? We want to get a little bit more concrete evidence for that. And so it matters because the past is not past. The past is still something we're trying to write in the present. We're still trying to make sense of what happened in the past to deal with some social issues that linger, right? So in other words, the treatment of American Indians has been nothing short of horrific, and we're trying to use archaeology for a source of good in present-day communities, doing what they want us to do, helping us inform them in ways that can be very beneficial to the living. When you talk to native peoples, it's really not about archaeology being a past thing. This is their stuff, right? This isn't something that they even regard necessarily as historical, right? These are things that their ancestors had, but they still hold meaning in their lives today. And so we're really trying to rewrite and help rewrite the way people think about the past, because again, history is not just something that is gone and buried. It's something that has lived on and continues to live on in people's stories and people's feelings and people's understandings about that. And we're hoping to enrich that by involving not only the descendants, but community members who are descendants from the earliest Americans in this location, as well as others. So this project involves undergraduate students and graduate students, and then a few supervisors, such as myself, who's the director of the project. A lot of the materials we're unearthing will become parts of projects they work on in classes, projects they might work on as a thesis project, kind of a capstone senior year project, as well as PhD students and other graduate students that are using the material for dissertations and other things. And of course, all this is culminating in various publications, right? Not just for journals, but for the wider public. So we're really equally interested in creating things that are widely disseminated in the local community in collaboration with our tribal partners as to what's appropriate and not appropriate to disseminate according to their wishes of their own histories, and so forth. And so it really provides the material for lots of educational opportunities after the field. But in the field itself, people are learning firsthand the process of archaeology. And as an archaeology professor, I preach in every single class, if you're really interested in archaeology, do a field school immediately, because until you get your hands dirty and get in the ground and understand the physical and mental challenges, you may be misled by romanticized versions of archaeology, right? So Indiana Jones and sort of this kind of mystique that archaeology is just cool and interesting and fun and so forth. It's actually a lot more hard work to get at that. Not to say that it isn't fun and not to say that it's not rewarding, but some people are turned off because they are misled in thinking it's only that, when in fact it's more challenging physically than it is anything else at times. So my long-term vision really is to help restructure the discipline of archaeology, because I think moving forward, archaeology is going to be a much different discipline. We're standing literally at a place, one of the few places where archaeology began as a profession. In the 1800s, Harvard and other institutions were going around the country funding excavations, conducting excavations in various ways to gather materials to build their museums, and also gather materials to kind of show the world how impressive North America was on its own terms, right? Not just, the great materials in Rome or Greece or Egypt, right? But to understand that we are living in a landscape that's just as important. And so we couldn't be at a better place, because we're not only at sort of the first frontier of America as an independent nation. This is the old Northwest Territory, which is where people came and settled in the late 1700s, just after they became independent from Britain. But also it's sort of the first frontier of American archaeology, right? So we couldn't be in a better place, and we couldn't be at a more important site, because this again is the beginning of corn agriculture, which of course, if you look around any of the fields at this time of year, is filled with corn. The originators of this are underneath our feet right here. And of course, this goes back thousands of years into Mexico, ultimately. So I think it's the perfect place to start a project that hopefully will spread in terms of the methodology, serving as a model really for moving forward in terms of the next phase of archaeology to mature even more as a discipline. And I couldn't be more excited, and I think all the students couldn't be more excited about that, because we really are at a critical juncture. And I think that more and more archaeologists, such as myself, who've seen older types of archaeology are now are helping to be part of the next phase in its development, to really do more just and ethical kinds of work in collaboration with the people whose material this is. And that couldn't be more exciting to us.